I'm Autumn Lockett,
And this is Mitch Randall.
and you're listening to Good Faith Weekly.
Welcome to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, Autumn and I are going to catch up. We understand that Norman is under siege by a ice storm right now, and so we're gonna check in on Autumn, make sure she's okay with 4 kids at home from school for 2 days, and then, of course, we're going to talk about the situation unfolding in Ukraine right now with Russian tanks rolling through the country, even knocking at the door of Kiev, the capital, and as far west as Lviv. So it's just a very difficult, intense situation, and Autumn and I are going to talk about that here in a second. Later on in the pod, we've got a very special guest with us. Dan Bailey is a singer-songwriter and has a wonderful song out right now that you're going to want to hear. It's just a lovely interview, and he performs that song. It's about women in ministry, and it is wonderfully done, and so you want to stay tuned for that interview as well. So it's a good show. Here we go.
Rainforest, volcanoes, coastlines with crystal blue water, fresh fruit and seafood. Join Good Faith Media for an immersive experience on Hawaii's Big Island. Discover brilliant night skies with our friend, astrophysicist Paul Wallace. Explore and have fun with your small group of adventurers. Join us May 21st through the 28th. Learn more at faithexperiences.org.
Autumn. Well, we got to talk about Ukraine and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but first I want to check on you. I know it's day 2 of an ice storm here in the Southern Plains.
I too am under siege. Mhm. Yep, I am.
So-
It's I have some allied forces here with me. Thankfully, my husband is also iced in, so at least I'm not by myself.
Yeah.
It's going okay. It's the kids, I think, are just, they can see spring on the horizon. They're sort of over the winter magic. Christmas is long past. All of our winter birthdays are long past, and they're just ready. My 4-year-old, hand to God, spent half the day yesterday while we were in wind chills of -5 in a bikini. She's so ready for summer, as am I.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. So no rations at this point. Nobody's been injured. Nothing like
I
that.
mean, there are injuries. Well, Mitch, I don't know if you've heard this or not. It's sort of a seismological, geological, interesting miracle in that the floor is actually lava at our house.
Really?
Right.
That's
So there have
amazing.
been some burns and some, bumped elbows and knees as folks try to escape that lava. And
Right,
it
right,
sort of
right.
travels. Like it seems to happen when the 8-year-old says, 3, 2, 1, the floor is lava. And then that's what, it's just amazing. Just suddenly no one can touch the floor. People are defying gravity. It's chaos down here, Tom.
Do you and your husband partake in this? Because
It
I'd like to
depends.
see images of that. So
He's got some vertical. Like, I'll just tell you, he can do it. I'm more of a roll and kind of try to get to the carpet situation myself.
gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Thanks for checking, though. And yes, absolutely. They can all come and play at your house this weekend. So you just name the time and place.
Thanks for that. So,
Uh-huh.
well, Autumn, we've got to switch gears here and get pretty
Mhm.
serious for a second because as of last night, Russia at the helm at the helm of Vladimir Putin, their president, began the invasion of Ukraine and saw it building up for the last several weeks on the eastern side of Ukraine. And last night, it began to be, our last night, early
It's like
in the morning.
6 a.m. their time, right?
Yeah, early in the morning in Ukraine.
Woke up and declared war.
Yeah, tanks and bombs. Tanks started rolling in. Bombs started to be dropped, and less than 24 hours into this campaign, we're seeing reports from major news organizations that there are Russian troops in Kiev, Russian troops as far west as Lviv, and so this is a full-scale invasion. No matter what Putin says, he wants the entire country.
So, I mean, as a child born in 82, like
Mhm.
I don't remember all this Russia stuff. And so I've been trying to read and kind of catch up on what's going on. Um in your article today, I was going to give you a little bit of a hard time because you were definitely siding with Mitt Romney over Obama a little bit, and I had to kind of rub my eyes a little bit. But
Right.
it was interesting to hear that dialogue, and that wasn't very long ago that they were having that conversation with people like Russia. What are you talking about?
Right. Well, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia was in terrible straits economically. I mean, it was just a shell of its once, self when it was USSR. And so it didn't seem like a big threat to the West anymore. It was no longer a superpower. Uh, but the rise of Vladimir Putin has brought them back upon the world stage. And he has worked in very meticulous ways, very demonstrative ways, acting in my recollection as a dictator in many instances, ostracizing marginalized political opponents. There's been reports that he's even assassinated political opponents and opposition, quelling that to gain this tight grip on the Russian people. With his lies and with his propaganda, President Putin has been able to convince much of Russia that they need to further a Russian agenda within the world if they are to survive. And so this is part of it. We're seeing, we saw it years ago when they annexed Crimea, which was the southern peninsula of Ukraine. And now there are other Russian speaking, ethnically Russian parts of Ukraine, especially in the east near the Ukrainian Russian border, that he is annexing. Originally he said that he wanted to just bring those or protect those Russian-speaking Russian provinces under Russian control, but with evidence today of Russian troops being as far west as Lviv, which is right next to Poland, he's going to take the entire country. You just can't trust him. And as my article indicated today, we've seen this before. We've seen this rhetoric before. We've seen these actions before. And it was a precursor to World War II. And Hitler did the very same thing. He convinced the German people that the entire world was against them, rallying around the Treaty of Versailles after World War I, that the world had basically crushed German and German culture, and therefore there needed to be a revitalization of German culture as well as liberation of German people around the world. And so he went into these provinces and began to annex them, and the West stood by, using strong language, passing sanctions against Germany. But when you're dealing with a dictator, it really doesn't matter. They're going to do exactly what they want to do because they are delusional and convinced that what they are doing is righteous and just, even though the rest of the world sees it as unrighteous and unjust. So I feel for the Ukrainian people right now. I'm really scared for their leaders because Putin does have a history of basically killing them. And so it's going to be an interesting 48 hours unfolding in Russia right now.
So I have a little bit of hope in that there's not the lag in the reporting in the news that there was in 30s, 37, 38. Yeah. I'm seeing pictures this morning of Ukrainian people on their knees praying out in, snow-covered landscapes. And so I'm hopeful that at least the world's not going to be able to, close the curtains and pretend this isn't happening, like happened in the 30s.
Yeah. And in addition, Ukraine is not parts of France, parts of Poland. While there was a defense put up on the annexation of those lands prior to World War II, the Ukrainians are unified. Much of Ukraine is unified. They do not want to fall under Russian control, period. And so the president there has already called up the reserves, everyone from 18 to 60. Autumn. That means I'd be going if I was
Can you
Ukrainian
imagine?
at this point.
I know.
But they are insistent. They don't want to fall under Russian control, and so they're going to fight back. I mean, I think Putin is going to find that it may be easy to move in initially, but the Ukrainian people, their resolve is strong, and I think they will fight for their independence and will continue to do
Hmm.
so. So I don't think
Hmm.
this is over by any means, no matter what it's looking like right now in the first 24 to 48 hours. So I am hopeful. And I think you're exactly right. The information is coming out very quickly. President Joe Biden met with his Security Council this morning in Washington D.C. I know the United Nations is already meeting. I watched a little bit of the Security Council meeting last night as the attacks began. It was interesting to see the Russian diplomat try to characterize this as a peace movement, or what's that language that they use? A
A peacekeeping, he didn't say
yeah,
mission.
peacekeeping
Yeah.
mission, and with the Ukrainian representative right there in front of him, and you can just see the Ukrainian minister putting his hand on his head, just shaking his head. Just, this is such lies, and so yeah.
That's why they're diplomats and I'm not, Mitch. I'm just saying.
you
I'd have
know,
had to throw some
I was
hands.
going to say that, UN could get real interesting if we appointed Ambassador uh, Autumn Lockett to
I
the
don't think
Security
Putin would
Council.
have had the nerve. I'm just saying.
That's right.
You get a mama in there and we just lay down the law.
That's exactly right. So, so
So we are praying for
we
Ukraine and
we
for
are
peace
praying.
in general here at Good Faith Media.
Absolutely. We just, I was in Lviv back in 2018 at the European Baptist Federation annual meeting, and pretty much in a hotel the entire time. I did get to see a very interesting situation develop, and this was right as Russian troops were moving to the border. There was talk about the invasion of Crimea at that time. War was raging in eastern Ukraine between Russian separatists, Russian-backed separatists, and Ukrainian military, and it was heartbreaking to see. But at that meeting, I got to see Russian Baptists and Ukrainian Baptists come together to pass a resolution asking and begging and praying for peace. And that was heartbreaking because in all of this power and all of this might of politicians and oligarchs around the world and executives who, own billions and billions of dollars, it's the people that suffer, Autumn. It's the everyday people who suffer.
Hmm.
And watching those Baptists come together at Lviv on hands and knees praying for peace was really an awesome moment for me. And now, as I look at the television set and see those same people now in their metro stations, subway stations, using them as bomb shelters in Kiev and Lviv, it's just heartbreaking because it is the people who suffer ultimately when
Hmm.
this happens. And so we do pray for them. And on the last day, I want to tell this one last story, wrap this up. On the last day I was in Lviv, the meetings were over. And so I thought I would just get out in the town and walk around their beautiful city. And I'm telling you, it was gorgeous.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe not as pretty as Prague, Czech Republic, but boy, it was close. Lviv was just a beautiful, beautiful city with their architecture. Well, I sat in the park one afternoon, or that afternoon, I got out and was watching a dad and his little boy play. And they were playing soccer, football, for the rest of the world. And they were just kicking the ball back and forth. And the ball ended up at the park bench that I was sitting. And so I decided to stand up and just pass it back to the little boy, and he smiled. And so he kicked it back to me. And I looked at the dad, and his dad kind of grinned, and I kicked it back to him, and we passed the ball back and forth for probably 60 seconds, and had a really good time. And he was laughing, and the dad was smiling. And so I reached in my pocket and I found an American quarter. Don't ask me why I had an American quarter in my in my pocket.
You're gonna go to Aldi, Mitch.
Yeah,
Come
maybe
on.
Aldi in Lviv, Ukraine. um, and so I asked, I certainly don't speak Ukrainian or Russian, but I showed the dad the quarter and asked him, by a gesture, if it was okay if I gave it to his son, and he said yes. And so I did, and it was just this, for me at least, this beautiful little moment of cross-cultural relationship between an American and a Ukrainian dad and son that, we're all human and we all want the same thing. We want to live peacefully. We want to see our children grow up and be happy and healthy and
Safe.
safe. Yeah. And it's just heartbreaking to think about that dad and that little boy now are under attack. So
Mm-hmm.
our prayers are with the Ukrainians. We continue to pray for all the leaders. That does include President Putin. Even though I have to pray through clenched teeth for him, I do so and hope that peace abounds all around. So, Autumn, you and I got to sit down with a very talented young man this week, Daniel Bailey. So, Daniel sat down with us, talked about what it's like to be a singer-songwriter in this day and age, and actually performs a few of his original songs for us. So it was really delightful. What'd you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed our time with Daniel as well. I feel like here at Good Faith Weekly, we sort of collect these, we talked about it off mic, we collect these musical artists who play in the key of descent. And if we ever start a recording label, that's what it's going to be called.
Well,
So folks
we need to
who can
grab that right now, Key of Descent.
right, TM. But they write music and they're able to say words in their music, speak these social justice truths, and it just because of the way that music can sort of soothe, it doesn't sound as harsh as if you were to just start sort of barking your thoughts on someone.
Absolutely. And his song "This Is My Home" that talks about a young woman being ordained or being baptized in a Baptist church, and then told that to serve she must submit, and then later on, her feeling a calling and being an ordained, but that church family who raised her, was nowhere to be found because
Couldn't see beyond the casserole.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it is a wonderfully written song. It's beautifully delivered. He does a fantastic job. And what I loved about Daniel was that he was so humble about it. He acknowledged that he probably is not the person to sing that song because he's a male, but he is the author of the song. I think he did a great job delivering it. And if anybody out there in the world that wants to record it with a female artist, I'm guessing Daniel would be happy to talk to you about that very thing.
Yes, we're happy to connect you.
Exactly right. So stay tuned. It's a lovely interview, and you certainly don't want to miss him performing "This Is My Home." It's up next.
Marvel at Pacific Coast Wells. Wonder in rainforests. Explore wild coastlands and towering cliffs. Join Good Faith Media for a unique and immersive experience in the Pacific Northwest and Olympic National Park. Enjoy engaging conversation with your small group of adventurers led by our team, which includes a journalist, historian, and theologian. Join us July the 23rd through 30th. Learn more at faithexperiences.org.
Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, we've got a very special guest with us, all the way from Veneta, Oklahoma. Daniel Bailey is a seminary student at Baptist Seminary of Kentucky, pursuing a Masters of Divinity degree. In his spare time, he's also a singer-songwriter, producing such songs as "This Is My Home" and "Saint Matilda, Sing Me Back Home." His sound combines the best of folk music with his passion for life, theology, and social justice. Daniel, welcome to Good Faith Weekly.
Well, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Now,
Excited.
Daniel, we really appreciate you being here. We knew that you were, we had this interview scheduled at 10 o'clock, but you've been up a while. I mean, you just told us before we hit record, you've had quite the evening. So tell our listeners about what happened.
Well, my beautiful dog, Lily, last night around 11:30 or so, as I was trying to kind of wind down and get to bed. Started not feeling well and acting a little bit unusual. And then that just kind of proceeded to get a little worse. And so we ended up having to do about I guess about a 3-hour round trip to an emergency vet, and get her sorted out. And everything should be fine according to the doc there. The next 24 to 48 hours, she should be back to normal. But anyway, it was a pretty scary night, and one that kept me out all night. So I'm just glad to be here.
Well, we are glad that you're here with us as well. So you may be a little blurry-eyed, but we know your voice is just going to resonate and just be beautiful as we hear some of your songs here in just a moment. So, Daniel, let's talk about growing up and your love for music. When did you start discovering you had this aptitude for music and playing the guitar? And so talk us through that a little bit.
Sure. So my uncles, all of my uncles, have played music in some form or fashion or another at some level or another, and as well as my father also. And so growing up, I grew up in Kentucky, but our vacations where we went for Christmas, we went to Oklahoma City. And for summer break, we went to Oklahoma City. Because that's where all the family was. And so, when I would be there, inevitably there would be a kind of a family jam session. And I remember being pretty mesmerized as a kid, like, wow, that would be pretty cool to get to do that. And then I remember the first time my Uncle Jim, I remember him saying, "This is a song that I wrote." Mm-hmm. And I was a pretty little guy, so to remember that, it must have meant something to me. And those two things kind of sat with me. And then somewhere about middle school, when I realized that everybody else was going to catch up to my height and that I was, in fact, really slow and not going to be a professional basketball player.
Wah, wah, wah.
I figured I needed to find another angle, another avenue. And the truth be told, my dad had tried to get me to learn to play the guitar a couple of times, and I didn't pay attention, didn't listen. And about that time, my dad said, "Do you know how I met your mother?" And I said, "No, of course I don't know that." He said, "Well, I was playing guitar at church camp." And the story writes itself from there. I was able to sit and pay attention for days on end.
As a girl who's been at church camp, I can vouch.
Yeah, there could be a whole episode of Good Faith Weekly on Autumn's exploits at church camp, but we digress.
Yeah. But that's where I started kind of falling in love with the idea of singing and playing, and then I was kind of the oddball of Lone Oak Middle School in the 90s to be listening to Chris Christopherson and John Prine at the height of Boyz II Men's popularity. Wasn't exactly the coolest move I could make, but that's what I was into. Those were my influences, were the Christophersons, the John Prines, those kind of folks, and it just sort of built from there, and
awesome.
And has always been a part of my life since then.
Sure.
Well, that was actually our next question, was about some of your early influences. Who continues to influence you, and who are some of your favorite artists now?
Oh my goodness, that's a good question. I'm there. Of course, there's a ton. People. John Moreland, another Oklahoma connection there. John Moreland is. I can't imagine that there's a lot of songwriters better than him out there right now doing it. David Ramirez is another. Noah Gunderson. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the.
So Daniel, it sounds like, the singer-songwriters that have influenced you the most have this one incredible gift. Not only are they incredibly talented, but they're remarkable storytellers. How important is telling a story for you?
Well, I think it's the entire purpose of the song, is to tell a story. And one of the things that I love about music is that you can go all kinds of different directions with that to tell a story. And you may tell a story and someone may hear a completely different story than what you just intended to tell. And that's also beautiful to me. Yeah, I think I got that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you start realizing? I mean, you're listening to all these great artists growing up as a young man. You started, writing your own songs as well. When did you start to realize that music can be used as a tool for theological reflection, for social justice, for speaking, almost a prophetic voice and speaking out for those who are marginalized and ostracized in this world?
So I was raised around music, but I was also raised around what would be now today would be called a progressive Christian community.
Because as you said,
Nice.
your dad was a minister, right?
Correct. Yes. My father, my earliest memories are me running around the halls of what my friends and I refer to as the real, the old Central Baptist Church there in Lexington, Kentucky. And yeah, so my father was the associate pastor there, and of course, I had no idea. I tell people it was kind of like I was born in Narnia, and so I didn't know
Mm.
it.
Mm.
And so I knew that music was an extremely powerful tool from a young age. I knew that, and I knew that it spoke to me. And then I also was raised in this environment where social justice issues were talked about openly. They weren't. They weren't. It wasn't something to be scared of or to be angry about. It was just something that needed to be a conversation that needed to happen. And then when I moved from Lexington to Western Kentucky, and went to a local Baptist church there, full of great people. It still is. I will just say that it was a shock to my system in a lot of ways. And that's about the time that I think I realized that my music and my theology and my growing desire to be involved in social justice issues, even as a 13, 14-year-old kid, those all kind of came together and at about that same time. And then that's also around the time that I found, of course, Bob Dylan, Chris Christopherson, those kinds of people, lyric-driven songwriters who wrote simple songs that said really, really hard and powerful things. And that's where I am with that.
I love the description of growing up in Narnia. Just so that you know, Autumn and I grew up in the seven circles of hell, known as Baptist fundamentalism.
I don't know if our listeners heard me say "must be nice" when you said you grew up there.
Was it Falls Creek? Is that the camp?
Yeah, Falls Creek. I have. Okay, I got a little story here I can tell you. I am proudly banned for life from Falls Creek Baptist Encampment. So I wear that
non grata.
I wear that badge with honor and pride. So every time I drive
Daniel
through,
is bowing to Mitch for our audience that can't see this.
every time I drive through the mountains of Davis, Oklahoma, I look to the west, and let's just say I offer them a salute.
Radio edit.
A salute.
Yeah, that sounds about like my dad driving through Louisville at any point. Salutations and all sorts of mantras and whatnot.
Sure.
That's amazing. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your song, Saint Matilda, Sing Me Back Home. It sounds autobiographical, is it?
Yeah, so the people in the song are all real. It's I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, on St. Matilda Drive. I can tell you the address and the phone number still.
That's fantastic.
And that cast of characters it was all around. Yeah. So yeah.
And what I love about your storytelling, Daniel, is that the song, while it's autobiographical towards you, as you were singing it, I was recalling all those kids in my childhood. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I think that's the beauty and use the word magic of singer songwriters like you is that you're telling this beautiful story about your own life, but it resonates with the listener so much that they're able to think about their own lives as well. So it was just really fantastic. This is Daniel Bailey, Saint Matilda, Sing Me Back Home.
Me and Tommy were 6 years old, sitting down by the creek, when he told me he was in love with a girl named June. But anytime she'd come around, he never said a word, and I'm betting June never knew. Sarah was the first girl to ever break my heart. She kissed me beside the playground swings. My head went full of funny, my eyes went full of stars, and both of my knees, they gave up on me. That's back when we were kids, back when today meant growing old. Take me in your arms and sing soft and low. Saint Matilda, won't you sing me back home?
Oh, love it. I love that sound and the storytelling. Full of funny. I can remember that day in my life as well. So thank you
You
so
can
much for
remember
sharing.
way back
Hey,
then?
hey, 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 hey. I didn't live during the arranged marriage times. Oh, well, Daniel, thank you so much. But Daniel, there's another song that you have written that once we heard it, we absolutely knew we had to have you as a guest here at Good Faith Weekly. The song that broke our hearts when we heard it was This Is My Home. It's about women growing up in churches that will not let them be ordained or serve as senior pastor. There's a line in the song, baptized me in water, told me I was a daughter, but then told me to serve was to submit. You baptized me in water and ordained in sorrow, because when that time came, you were nowhere to be found. Daniel, when I heard you sing that, and I probably botched the line there, but you get the gist of it. When I heard you sing that, it put a huge lump in my throat and tears in my eyes when I think about all those little girls prohibited by their churches and pastors to follow their God given calling because of a false interpretation of scriptures.
And all the people that missed out on women serving
Right.
because of this, bigotry.
Yeah. So, how in the world, Daniel, did you come up with this song, and how in the world did you write it?
Kind of catalyst was a conversation that I had with a friend of mine who is a minister and a phenomenal one at that. And we have some similar backgrounds in churches that we've gone to, and she mentioned that just how sad it was that she knew she couldn't be ordained in her home church. And I thought, how many times have I heard, not to minimize her story, but to say how many times have I heard that story, and how incredibly sad is that, and unchristlike is that, and honestly, the song sort of just fell out. It took me maybe 20 minutes to write that song and sit down and record it on my phone.
Well, it's just absolutely fascinating, and Autumn and I have been talking about it ever since we listened to it, and you have graciously agreed to sing this song for us. This is my home.
I think that it's a tricky place to be in to sing this song as a white male in the United States of America. But I do think that it's a song that needs to be sung. And I hope that it, at the very least, can further a very long overdue conversation. And this is a song that is dedicated to people like Miss Connie, who took care of me in the nursery, to Janie Toy Powell, to my mother, my sister, my niece. Yeah.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Bailey, this is my home.
This is my home, the place I first fell in love. When I heard those words written in red. But this is my home, the place that first broke my heart. But when I think about what they said, oh, you baptized me in water, told me I was a daughter. Oh, but then you said to serve is to submit. Oh, you baptized me in water and ordained me in sorrow. 'Cause when that day came, you were nowhere to be found. Oh, it took a little time, but I'm getting better now, and I'm standing on holy ground. And this is my home, the place I first believed that a girl like me could dream. Oh, but this is my home, the place I learned a hard truth, that a girl that dreams often dreams alone. And this is my home. Oh, you baptized me in water, told me I was a daughter. Oh, but then you said to serve is to submit. Oh, you baptized me in water and ordained me in sorrow. 'Cause when that day came, well, you were nowhere to be found. Oh, it took a little time, but I'm getting better now, and I'm standing on holy ground. And I do not need your confirmation for this holy ordination, sir. You're not the one that called me by name. And I know that some will say, oh, it's always been that way. Oh, but I tell my kids we don't say that anymore. Oh, you baptized me in water, told me I was a daughter. But then you said to serve is to submit. Oh, you baptized me in water and ordained me in sorrow. 'Cause when that day came, you were nowhere to be found. Oh, it took a little time, I'm getting better now. Guess what I found? I'm not alone, I'm standing on holy ground. Holy ground.
Daniel Bailey, This Is My Home. If you want to know more about Daniel's music, you can check out his website at www.danielbaileymusic.net or follow him at Facebook at danielbaileymusic.net. Daniel, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your gift with us. And that song, This Is My Home, needs to be not only sung by men, women, children, but the entire congregation of the church. It's that important. Thank you for sharing your gift with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
But Daniel, before we let you go, we've got one last question that Autumn asked all of our guests. So, Autumn, for the umpteenth time, take it away.
Before I do, I'm just going to speak very quickly to how you introduced the song. And sort of we're questioning whether as a man you should sing it. And I will just say that were it not for men throughout history saying these words and holding space for women, we still wouldn't have a place. So I want to say thank you as a Christian woman, as someone raising daughters and sons, that you are absolutely the person to sing this. And I'm very thankful that you did.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a
Yes.
lot. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And so, on that note, Good Faith Media, our tagline is "There's more to tell." So, in light of your work and your mission and your music, I'd like to ask you what your more to tell is.
My more to tell is that there is more to come. I am on my second kidney transplant and have had a lot of ups and downs and kind of fits and starts in my life. But this is a new beginning. And so for me personally, the more to tell is that there is finally more to come. As far as my work and my music and those kinds of things, anytime that I can be a part of the process of furthering the conversation with regards to being more and more inclusive, then I'll take that opportunity. And that may be in a coffee shop, and that may be on stage in front of 1 million people. But either way, I think it is as you just said, it's just important to keep saying it and to keep spreading that message of inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. Amen. Daniel, thank you again so much. It has been an absolute delight to visit with you, and I just can't express enough. Thank you for sharing your gift with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And to our listeners, we want to thank you for tuning in this week to Good Faith Weekly. As always, Autumn and I really appreciate each and every one of you. And we'll be back next week with another guest. Until then, keep living good faith.